Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. Hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Crazy Chicken People podcast. You know, since I started raising chickens, there's been so many times that I've walked out into their run or seen them playing somewhere around the barn and saw them doing something that seemed so weird. And I just thought, what the heck is that? What is that chicken doing? Is she okay? And usually they are, but it happens all the time. And sometimes you'll see them doing some of these weird things that usually don't mean anything's wrong, but there actually could be a problem. And some of those playful behaviors they show, well, they look exactly like the signs of what can be a very serious issue. So while it can be entertaining to watch them do these things when you realize they're just playing around, we don't want to miss out on what could be the early signs of something they need our help with. So today, we're going to go over a list of 8 strange behaviors we might see from our chickens. And we'll try to figure out when we can sit back and just get a laugh from them, and when we need to recognize that our chickens are trying to tell us that something's wrong. Now, for those of you that have been at this for a while, or have really dedicated yourselves to learning all about the different ways our chickens can freak us out, you'll probably be familiar with a lot of these. Some we've even talked about on this show in the past. But if you're still learning the ropes or are fairly new to chickens, this might just help you sleep a little better at night, knowing that chickens can just do some weird stuff. But it doesn't always mean you gotta freak out. And if you're thinking a top 8 list, don't people usually do a top 10? Well, yes. Usually that's true. But I only thought there were 8 really worth talking about. And I didn't want to waste your time by just trying to add a couple more to fill space. But if there is something you think I missed, I would love to hear about it if you want to send me a message. So with that, let's get right into it, starting with the number 8 topic, egg eating. Now, there's not really anything funny about walking into your coop to find that one of your hens has been snacking on those eggs that you've put so much work into getting out of them. Sure, you might not be able to hold back a laugh when you see yolk all over the face of your favorite hen as she scrambles out of that nesting box when you catch her, trying to look all innocent, and it might have you wondering if you've somehow managed to raise a cannibal, and wondering what she's going to try to eat next that she shouldn't be. But for the most part, it just means that you've got yourself a curious chicken who found out that there's something tasty inside that shell. It's definitely annoying, and it can be a tough habit to break, but it usually isn't a sign of anything worse than that. Except, of course, when it is. Even in that case, it's probably not too bad. But if your chicken is missing something in its diet that it really needs, like protein or calcium, they're going to start looking for that in other places. And those eggs just happen to be a great source of both. So when you do see this happening, it's probably a good time to do a double check and make sure that their normal diet is providing everything they need. You know, certain times a year, they need some extra protein, like when they're molting. And even with a good layer feed, they might need a little extra calcium, especially during that time of year that they're really laying a lot. Check these things out, make sure you're giving enough to supplement their diet beyond just their feed, and then start working on breaking that habit. We got some tips for you on that in an older episode. Okay, number 7, and sticking with the egg theme here, when your chicken lays a shell-less egg. You know, it's kind of funny. The times I've seen this happen, the egg was actually never laid in a nesting box. I usually find them underneath a roosting bar, which could make it look even worse if you're not expecting it, leaving you to think that undeveloped eggs are just falling out of your chicken's butt in the middle of the night, which is kind of exactly what's going on. But it's usually not something you got to worry about. It's actually pretty common that a young chicken whose reproductive system is just finishing up developing and getting into that egg-laying cycle will lay some abnormal eggs. So, if you see some of these start to appear around the coop when you do have some young pullets around, I wouldn't sweat it. But if you've got a mature flock of layers, this could still happen from time to time. But if it's a common occurrence with any of your older girls, I would take a good look at what might be going on there. And again, make sure they're getting enough calcium. Now, on a side note to that topic, if you find a lash egg, you've got problems. It's a whole topic that maybe deserves its own show, but if you find an egg-shaped ball of pus, and that's pretty much just what it looks like, don't touch that with your skin. You want to put on some latex gloves when you clean that up, and make sure that there's no ooze left around that area that could get somebody else infected. And then you need to figure out who laid that thing and get her isolated. It is a problem. Like I said, maybe more on that in a future episode. But for now, we're moving on to number 6. Chickens who sleep in nesting boxes. Now, why do chickens do this? Well, it could be something as simple as a young chicken or a new flock member doing this temporarily because they haven't found their spot yet. And that's not really a big deal. Could even be a boss hen kind of claiming that spot as her own and letting those lower on the pecking order know that that's her box. Not the best thing to have going on, but again, not a huge deal. What should get your attention, though, is if healthy chickens who have a normal spot that they like to roost at night start doing this regularly, or just staying in that box for an extended amount of time. Could mean a few things. First, make sure that your roosting areas are clean so that they can feel comfortable in their bed. Make sure that mites aren't an issue and that some of those nasty things haven't set up shop on the roosting bar. And then check that individual chicken. She may be pretty sick and feeling like that's the only spot that she can get some privacy while she's working through something. Maybe offer up some vitamin supplements. A scrambled egg is always good. Some of those basic tools that we have for caring for a sick chicken. And then see what happens from there. And it's probably best to pull her out of that nesting box and get her isolated, both so that she can continue to feel safe and to protect the rest of the flock. And then give that box a good cleaning to make sure that she didn't leave anything behind. If you do see this happening, keep an eye out for bullying. Make sure that they've got enough space for everyone. Sometimes the minimum amount of recommended space just isn't enough if you've got a couple princesses in there that like to have a lot of room. And I'm sure you'll figure out pretty quick if you have a real problem or not. All right, number 5 is chickens standing on one leg. Now, I'll be quick on this because it's really just a small thing, but it has been on my radar recently with my rooster Arnold, who recently moved in with Brock and his girls after Jeffrey's passing. So I've had this guy for about a year. He was living in his own coop with a few of his own girls, and that entire time I never saw him do anything like this out of the ordinary, this one leg thing, until he moved. Then all of a sudden, almost every time I see him, he's standing there on one leg. So first thing I do is check him out because there is some issues that could cause this, like bumblefoot. He could have a hurt or broken toe, maybe a nail that had overgrown and got ripped off, but he didn't have any of those. And there is some very normal reasons chickens might do this, like if they're trying to conserve body heat or just rest. But with Arnold, I think it's just like a weird nervous tic, or maybe some really strange way of him showing off. I don't know. He is fine though, nothing visibly wrong with his foot, and it didn't seem like he was in pain when I was checking it out. But it was a good reminder for me that some of this weird stuff they do could be a clue to an underlying problem. Okay, number 4 is when your chicken is constantly fluffing up their feathers. Now, this is super common with a mother hen that's protecting her babies. You walk up on that mama hen that's walking her chicks around, and she's very likely to try to shoo you off. They do this by trying their best to look as big as they can and intimidating, and it kind of works. They look way bigger, and I know I'll probably get pecked if I ignore that sign and reach down for a chick anyways. Roosters will do this a lot too if they're trying to intimidate another rooster, or sometimes just to show off. And they'll do it when dust bathing, either to get some of that dust up in there or to shake it off. But there could be a very similar reason they do this that does mean trouble. If you notice your chicken is constantly fluffed up and looking like she's trying to shake something off, Well, that something could be mites or some other critter crawling around on her skin. So if you do see this and it seems kind of excessive or like it just doesn't seem like there's a good reason for it, get underneath those feathers for her and give her a good check. And you just might find that she's trying to shake some bugs loose. Okay, moving right along to number 3, a chicken who refuses to leave their coop. As much as you may want to think that you've just done such a great job decorating in there, and your chickens really appreciate how well you keep their space clean, the truth is, there's really not any good reasons that your chickens would choose to stay inside. There's a couple, like maybe it's hot out and that's the only place they can find some shade at some point of the day. Could be that the coop door is where you let them out from, and it's that time of day that they expect you to get home and turn them loose. That's a real thing with my girls. But those are usually done as a group, and the reasoning there is pretty obvious. But if you notice one hen in particular that just won't leave, it probably means that something's got her stressed out or afraid. And she just wants to be in the only place that she feels safe. So do her a solid and figure out what's got her spooked. I've seen this before when introducing new chickens to the flock. I usually start by putting them in there at night, hoping that in the morning everyone wakes up and they're just friends and go about their business. But you may have a couple bullies in the flock that don't make those new friends feel so welcome. Maybe chasing them off the feed or the water, not letting them hang out with the rest of the group. So those new chickens just try to stay where they got put, hoping that someone comes and lets them out of there. You might try adding another feeder for a bit so that she can eat without stepping on anyone else's turf. Double check that, maybe your dog isn't sniffing around the run, making her feel unsafe out there, or that there's any weakness in the protection. I mean, who knows? She might have seen a raccoon or a skunk or something like that trying to break in, and she's letting you know that you've got some work to do. All right, number 2 is one that can get pretty bad if left unchecked. And that is if you see one of your chickens pulling feathers off of other birds and eating them. Now, the feather pulling part, that happens. Roosters will sometimes grab a hen and just give them a tug, even when they're not trying to mate. And hens will bully or put other chickens in their place from time to time by pulling out a few feathers. And that's usually as far as it goes. But there can be other reasons for this too. And in the case of one chicken keeper I know, it can get pretty bad. Like to the point of a hen's entire rear end going bald. And the only way to stop it is to separate those birds completely. Now, of course, we don't want to see any of our chickens running around with bald butts. But there can be psychological damage going on there too. So you gotta figure out what's happening. It could be boredom, which can be remedied with toys, maybe some time out of the run, creative treats to go after. It could also be that they need more protein in their diet, and they're trying to supplement that the only way they can find. So if you catch your chickens doing this, keep an eye on it. A couple plucks here and there, not a big deal. Unless, of course, you ask that chicken that just got a feather pulled out. But if you're seeing this consistently, it's time to step in before you start seeing your chickens go completely bald in their rear. Okay, number 1, I'm mentioning mostly just because it always freaks me out. I mentioned a couple episodes back that I am dealing with Merricks in my flock. It's not a fun subject, and it kind of hurts every time I have to think about it. It also makes it that much worse that I have to get freaked out about it on a pretty regular basis. Now, I know what dust bathing looks like. And there is times when they're kicking dust up on themselves. It kind of looks like those visual symptoms that come along with Merricks. But then there's other times. They're not even dust bathing because I'll see them in the grass or sometimes even in the gravel, right out there in the hot sun, laying there barely moving. They have their legs out in these crazy positions. It looks like they're dying. I have seriously crept up on Bandit before after seeing her like this. She's not moving. Her legs and wings seem to be sticking out all over the place. I'm slowly walking up, thinking the worst, and I'm like, Bandit, are you okay? And then she hops up and everything's fine. Honestly, I don't know what that's all about, except that I guess chickens just sometimes have to stretch it out in the sun. But it absolutely freaks me out. After you find a chicken that's dying of Merricks, you don't ever want to see one laying there with its legs sprawled out all crazy like that. I don't really have any good info about this, I just had to mention it because it's one of those things they do that scare me on a regular basis. Guys, thanks for hanging out with me again. I always appreciate it. I don't do this very often, but I do want to ask if you're enjoying the show, please do share it with a friend, share it on Facebook, subscribe, or leave me a rating or review if you can. Stuff like that really does help get the show out in front of other people that haven't heard it. I hope you all are having a good time getting your chickens ready for a hot summer. You guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you again soon.